Hello and welcome to the Priggya Arora Show, where we discuss entrepreneurship and law with people who have been there and done that. My name is Priggya Arora, founder of PA Legal and Intellectual Property Law Firm in India. And our guest for today is very inspiring, a business development coach for lawyers, Scott Simmons. Welcome, Scott. How are you doing?
Priggya, it's a real, pleasure and honor to be invited along to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Scott. And let's begin with a warm-up question, which is, who is your favorite fictional character from the legal field?
Ooh, right. So okay. So this might be I don't know if you've heard this one before, but I'm kind of torn between either Elle Woods from Legally Blonde or Vinny Gambini from My Cousin Vinny. I don't know if you know that second one. Not everyone does, but the two of them, I think not only do they just empathy and a desire to help, but also that tenacity to succeed when everyone around them is doubting them. I love that.
Perfect, Scott. And how do you feel these fictional characters? Are they true? Are they not? Does this happen in the real terms?
I love that. Does it happen? Yeah. Do you know what? It does. I think obviously, look, they are comedies and they are sort of larger than life characters. But I think at their very core, yes, I see it and I experience it every day with the people that I meet and the lawyers that I work with. So yeah, I do see them grounded in reality.
Perfect. So Scott, now coming to you, would you like to tell us your story and how you ended up being a coach, a business development coach for lawyers? Because this is a very interesting field.
Thank you so much. So I started out as a practicing lawyer, and I went to work at a relatively small high street firm at the beginning of in the early 2000s, and I was lucky enough, Priggya, to meet somebody at this firm who became a mentor of mine, who taught me the importance of not just business development, but of understanding people, of wanting to get to know people, wanting to really help. And that changed my whole outlook. I thought I was, somebody who drafted documents and managed risk, but that's not what it's about. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody by my side for a number of years who really encouraged me to get into business development. And if I would go to him with ideas, we would sit and work through them, and then he would encourage me to take them forward. But not just that, he would put me up in front of the partnership and say, this is Scott's idea. I'm here, I support it 100%. And he was incredible for my career. And all throughout when I was practicing, and I practiced for up until the early 10s, all throughout that, business development became a huge part of what I did. And everywhere I went, I would work with young lawyers to encourage them to get involved as well. And I gave them the same platform to build and to grow their business development skills as well. And I got to 2012, and I realized I felt quite burnt out from the practice. I'd done a long time where I'd been working stupid hours, and I realized that I'd fallen out of love with the practice of law, with actually the technical side of it. But I loved getting to know people. I loved chatting. Yeah. And I realized that the more I let people talk, as well as being incapable of not speaking, as the more I allow people to speak, the more they would tell me. And I realized that my job wasn't just to answer the legal questions for them, it was to help them however I could. If I knew people that could help, I wanted to help. And that stood me, that enabled me to be somebody that they trusted a lot more. And so when the opportunity came up for me to move out of the practice of law and just do pure business development, which is something that is very difficult for lawyers to do the two, to do the practice and the business development, even if your love is for business development, it's very difficult to do. And so when I got the opportunity to leave the practice and just do business development, I jumped at it. And so for like the last 10 years, that really has been my focus. And I've worked, not just in law, but I've worked in other industries. And it has enabled me to see how business development or selling works in different ways, with different clients from different jurisdictions. Because I've worked with people all over the world, Priggya, and there are differences. There are cultural differences. There are these differences in how business is seen to work, and alongside that, being able to learn coaching and take what I learned from all of those years of working with lawyers and be able to help lawyers develop their careers. There is something magical about that. Yes. Really, really magical. And so that's what I do. I coach and I train lawyers in how to win more work. But it's around a different way of thinking about what business development is. And then I help law firms develop strategies for how they're going to grow and take those strategies out to the marketplace. So that's how we get to today.
Yes, Scott. And, you beautifully explained how different industries work in different manner. So now coming to law, I feel that there is a gap in terms of how traditional law firms used to operate and how newer upcoming lawyers want to operate or are trying to operate, or probably trying to change the mindset. So do you have any thoughts about it, and how probably new lawyers should think? Are they moving in the right direction, breaking the old legitimacy and things like that?
Yes, that's a wonderful question, by the way, because I do think that part of what I talk about is kind of dragging the legal industry into the 21st century. Okay. And I'm not ashamed of using that kind of language either, because I do think that in a lot of cases, we're still looking at law firms as if they are the law firms of even 30 or 40 years ago, when the world was a completely different place. We are talking about an age now where technology is just going to continue to replace the traditional things that lawyers got done. The drafting of the documents, the research, all of those things, they are changing. And not just that, but the client experience is different. And the clients themselves are different to how they were 30 or 40 years ago. You have a new generation of business owners that are coming through. You have a world in which flexible working is becoming much more the norm. We are in a post-COVID world. We're talking about a world that is drastically different, and thinking we can continue to be the same law firms we were 30, 40 years ago, it just doesn't make sense. And so as a profession, we need to be encouraging the use of technology. Technology is there as an aid. It is not going to replace us. But we have this fear on a couple of fronts that it will. And I understand, I do understand it. I understand that if technology is going to speed things up, then that means for those law firms that are focused on the billable hour, on the face of it, the return on the investment is poor because it means their fees are going to go down. But again, the world is changing, and actually technology is going to enable us to work very differently. Correct. If we embrace technology. And we have to, I rail against this saying of soft skills. I can't bear it. And people refer to them as soft skills, which implies, you know, and the technical stuff is called hard skills,
Hard.
as if hard skills are difficult and soft skills are easy, and or less important in some way. But actually, these are the skills that are going to that make the difference to clients. You know, those communication skills, those listening skills, those empathy, all of these, you know, selling skills are hugely important. And so we need to adapt, and we need to start thinking about how we come into the 21st century.
I know. So you have rightly told so much about it, because I too feel that there is soft skills are much more important, or at least equally important as hard skills. Because if we don't have that, probably you and I could not connect. I could not connect with my audience. I could not connect with my clients. So first thing is to establish relationships, and then we can probably do good work and offer them.
Right. And again, that's so spot on. So I never refer to them as soft skills. I either call them essential skills, or I call them human skills, because they are essential. It's no longer enough to be technically gifted as a lawyer unless you can engage with your clients, unless you can help them, unless you can understand them and help them achieve their goals. Then you are it's no longer enough just to do the technical work.
Yeah, absolutely important. So nowadays we have these, conversations going on LinkedIn, that law schools are not probably focusing on law skills. They are focusing on basically knowledge and not skills. So recently I wrote something about it, that lawyers are not taught these human skills, and the value of these human skills is so high. And coming back to you, Scott, I just read a post from you today which said that in initial years of your career, you are the CEO, CFO, human resource, PA, receptionist, everything when you start with a law firm. So according to you, which are the skills that should be important at that time, and how should people probably progress from one stage to the next stage?
I love that. I was thinking about that post over the weekend, because I do what I do as much to help lawyers, but I want to be around my family, my children. I want to spend as much time with them as possible. And I realized that I've known it, but it really hit me over the weekend that when you're running your own business, you are everything. You are, in those early days, particularly when it's just you are everything. You are the start to the finish and beyond of your clients and your prospects and your intermediaries and your stakeholders. You are the start to the end of their journey. And that can feel very overwhelming. And so how do you deal with something like that, especially when none of us are ever always at our best? We're never always at our best. We have great days, we have medium days, we have bad days, we have horrible days. And we have to remember to cut ourselves some slack, as I said in that post. We have to learn to be able to, forgive ourselves, use every day as a learning experience. And one of the things that when you're in those early days, as you mentioned, one of the really, really important things, process. I teach my clients the importance of process. You can be goal driven, but if you focus too much on the goal, you can get so caught up and you can get so overwhelmed by it that you don't manage to achieve it. So what I teach my clients is that it's amazing to have the goals. Have those goals, set those goals, and then the first thing you need to do is chuck them behind you and forget about them. Just forget about them. Why? Because your only focus after that is on the process.
Yeah.
What are you going to do every single day? What processes are you going to put in place every single day that moves that dial a little bit more towards it? So I'm a huge fan of things like marginal gains. I'm a big cycling fan, and this came to me via, Sir Dave Brailsford, who managed Team Sky and the British cycling team, Team Ineos now for the Tour de France and the road cycling. But he brought that to my attention, and it's those tiny little things that we do, tiny little changes that we make, that when you add them up are much larger than the sum of their parts on their own.
Yeah.
And once you start putting tiny little processes in place, you not only reach your goals, but you go far beyond them. And you're actually, the goals themselves seem less important because you are on this constant journey.
Yes. Absolutely, Scott. You have beautifully explained how tiny little things matter. And I am also a huge fan of all this and the work of James Clear and things like that. So Scott, just to give an example, I always say, if someone tells me that I am a punctual person, if I come to office uh, at time one day, it doesn't matter. But if my colleagues, they say Prigya comes on time 365 days a year. That's extraordinary, but it's a single thing which is done repeatedly.
Right. And firstly, things like books like Atomic Habits have completely changed my life, by the way. So honestly, it's one of the most powerful books I've ever read. So I'm so pleased that you mentioned it. But it is, and I have to tell you, my wife will tell you and family will tell you I'm terrible with punctuality. I'm just terrible at it. But I've learned that it doesn't take much to get it right.
Yes.
It's tiny little things that you change, and the sum of those tiny little changes means that I'm now more punctual. And actually, it's things like this, those tiny little changes that end up making having big effects. And when we just break everything down into tiny little things and tiny little steps, that's incredibly powerful. So I love that.
And it doesn't feel overwhelming at that time. It's like it's easy. We were not able to crack the code.
Right. And again, it's one of those things that you say, God, I'm always rushing first thing in the morning. And then you kind of you talk to the person, and they say, well, I'm not much of a morning person, so I kind of set my alarm, and then I snooze it for 15 minutes, and I snooze it for 15 minutes more, and it's kind of like, well, okay, well, there's a happy medium to be had there, because if you're rushing, maybe what you need to do is meet halfway in the middle, set the alarm for 15 minutes later, but get up at that point rather than snoozing, and you won't be quite as rushed as you were from snoozing it for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And is those so when I'm kind of training and teaching, we have these conversations. What tiny little thing can you do? Can you set up your day for tomorrow? Can you set out the last thing you do today? So you're not coming in and trying to work it out then. Can you wake up 10 minutes earlier so that you're not quite so rushed? What can you do that are really, really small, and you notice the change in people, and they're what we kind of call easy wins. Those small things that kind of that are noticeable.
I know, just as you gave this example, another thought which I follow, it is so relatable that I want to share. Things like these are not simple, they're not easy, but they are simple. That just means that it is simple to perform, but when you have to do that consistently, it becomes, oh my God, I have been doing this since an year now. How is it even possible?
Right. And that's so true, isn't it? And I really love that when you because there's such small changes, you don't necessarily notice them. And I always say to people, those small changes, you may not notice the difference in a day or a week or a month, but when you look backwards a year, you will notice just how massively different things are. So yeah, again, very much on the Atomic Habits same page.
Yes, absolutely. That is my Bible. I just love that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Scott, now coming back to you, what keeps you motivated and how do you structure yourself?
So I've got to tell you, motivation is not much of a problem for me because I genuinely love what I do. So I feel incredibly blessed in that way. I feel very fortunate in that way to have you know, sort of moved my career in this direction, and I get to work with incredible people. So motivation most of the time is not a problem. And I do have days where I feel less motivated. And when I'm feeling like that, one of the things I've learned to do is not to try and push through. Because if I'm not at my best, then I'm not going to be giving anybody my best. And what I will do is I'll go off somewhere, or I'll do something else. I'll read a book, I'll go for a walk, I'll take the rest of the day off. What I won't do anymore is I won't try and push through. But in terms of what I do, it's all, again, it comes back to process. And I've had to become almost ruthless in terms of my productivity.
Yeah.
Because something I wrote about recently is, you know, your to-do list never really ends anymore. I've never known a time where I've been able to just go, oh, I'm done. I'm just going to sit back now, and I don't remember a time anymore where I've done everything. So it's not about getting through your to-do list. It's about being able to manage your productivity. And in order to do that, you have got to have an element of ruthlessness to it. And so a number of years ago, I discovered the Eisenhower decision matrix. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of that. And again, it's something I teach all of my clients, because there is this overwhelm around how am I going to get through things. And the decision matrix, which has those 4 quadrants about, you know, what are you going to do straight away? What are you going to schedule? What are you going to delegate? And what are you going to delete? Okay, so the do bit is really easy, because we're all going to do our work, and those things that are important and urgent, we're all going to get those done. And then in the other quadrant, we've got those things that are important, but they're not quite urgent. So we'll schedule those. We're all very good at those two. Where we get where we're not so good is at, you know, is the delegating, because I think this is a bit of a thing with lawyers. We do like to be in control of everything. So delegating can be a problem. But when you add an element of ruthlessness to it, you just go, right, okay, so this is, you know, it's urgent, but it's not the best use of my time. Once you start to understand where you add most value, then you start to think, okay, well, if it's not the best use of my time, whose the best use of time is it? And you can delegate. Now, the one that we are absolutely terrible with is deleting, okay? Because everything seems like it's got a place. If it's come in your email, if it's come to you and it's come through an email or something, it's come to you somehow, then it must have some value to it. But when you start to become ruthless, understanding that there are just things that are not going to add value to your business and they're not going to add value to you personally, become ruthless about it. Get your to-do list every single day into those quadrants. Decide which things need delegating and which things need deleting. Be unapologetic about it. You know, apologize to the person who you're going to have to say no to, but be unapologetic about it, because this is your business and it's your workload and it's your practice. and it's your clients and it's your stakeholders. And so that was also a real game changer for me.
Awesome, Scott. What made me laugh about deleting is it's so hard to delete stuff from. It's like I want everything and I want to do also everything. So it's so hard to delete. And then there are things like I don't know whether you know about the concept of one day someday maybe. So instead of deleting stuff, we put all the stuff into a list called one day someday maybe, and it's so interesting to look at that list and see it.
I do love that so much. And you know what's funny about that is so in my inbox is never empty. And it's not only not empty, but it's I'm learning to be much more organized with it. So things go into a place. My wife has been a very good teacher on me for this. The things in her inbox are only things that have not been completed in some way. If they've been completed in some way, then they're moved out. They're kept in its old folder or something. I keep things in my inbox that do not need to be there, that have been completed. And I'm learning this process. My wife is helping me go through this process. But there are things, Priggya, that are months old that have not been read.
Yeah.
And I look back at them, and every so often I go, if they've been in here for 6 months and I haven't got round to them, I have to be honest about why that is. And it's because they don't go into the quadrants that are getting done. They need to be in that delete. And I need to be better. And that's what I have learned. So the inbox is still a bit of a mess, but in terms of getting rid of stuff, I've become, as I say, ruthless about it.
Absolutely amazing. I know if there is a space in our brain, then only we'll be able to we'll have more creativity. So it's absolutely important to delete stuff, but there is some fear which stops us from deleting stuff. And
yeah, we're human beings. We don't want to upset anybody.
Yeah.
So what we end up doing is we end up kind of ignoring it, putting it to one side, making it almost, if that's in the inbox, if somebody wants me, they'll follow up.
Correct.
And if they don't, I'll just ignore it. And I won't have to be the one to make the decision. They'll have made that decision for me. Doesn't work.
Awesome. Now, Scott, coming to our 3, 2, 1 rapid fire round. So 3 things you are grateful for.
So 3 things I'm grateful for. Okay. So the first one, without question, my wife and 4 kids. I feel incredibly, I'm not one who believes in luck, but I do feel lucky to have a wife and children who are so incredibly supportive, and they are brilliant, and they are honestly my wife and I are a team, both in business and outside of business. So I'm very grateful for them. Number 2, the people that I have met throughout my career. So I've talked about my mentor, but not every experience in my career has been a good one. Not every, we have good and bad experiences. And the important thing that I've learned is about using every experience as a learning opportunity. Yeah. And everybody that I have come across has taught me something. And I think the beauty of something like LinkedIn is that we are able to learn on such a much greater scale than we ever have done. The chances of you and I connecting pre-LinkedIn would be almost impossible. But look at what something like that platform has given, the opportunity and an experience that has given us. Yeah. We now know that we both love Atomic Habits. Yeah. And we might never have discovered that about each other were it not for LinkedIn bringing us together. So those good and bad experiences. And I think the third one, health. I read a quote recently. Let me get this right. Good health is a crown that sits on a well person's head that only a sick person can see. I can't remember where that quote comes from. I'm going to have to look it. I'm going to have to look it up, because whoever it was deserves the credit for that quote. But we take for granted our health all the time. And I've had close personal experience of things like cancer and dementia. And when you experience those things, you realize just how precious our health is, and how every single day we should be just grateful for it. So yeah.
So family, people, and health. Now coming to two traits that you think are useful for a legal career.
Two traits that are useful for a legal career. Okay. So it's obvious that a technical ability is important. That's obvious, that's a given. But I go back to Elle Woods and Vinnie Gambini. I think empathy, I think communication. Hold on. This is going to be three now. I think empathy and listening are the key. I think communication is massively important, but unless you can listen properly and unless you can empathize with people, you're never going to allow them to get to the heart of what's really going on, and that is where you are going to help the most.
Yeah, empathy and listening, absolutely awesome. And now, one aspiration you have for the future.
An aspiration for the future. I just want my children to grow up happy and healthy.
Wow.
And I think from personal perspective, that's
wow.
The ultimate aspiration for me.
Happy and healthy children. Awesome. And Scott, now to conclude, can you share some key takeaways for people who are young lawyers or who are doing entrepreneurship in law and trying out their hands in entrepreneurship?
Okay. So three takeaways. I love these questions. Three takeaways. Okay, firstly, BD, when it comes to law, it comes to professions, whatever it is, but for lawyers and entrepreneurs thinking, BD can't wait. Okay. What we do as a profession is we put it off and we put it off and we put it off. We're hoping that there's a BD team in the law firm that will do it all for us, and we'll just be allowed to get on with the work. That isn't how it works. That's never going to be how it works. And the longer you go through your career waiting for that to happen, when you get to partnership and the pressure then really is on, then you're going to find it really tough, because most legal services are a complex sale. So they take time before it closes, before you win the work. Learning those techniques early so that you can really hone them and develop them over the course of your career is really massively important. Don't think that you can that it'll happen, it'll come. It won't. You've got to dedicate yourself to it. Number two, you have a network for a reason. Okay, we use our network as if it's some kind of database for making us feel like we know lots of people. Your network is there, and the reason for it is to be able to help clients. It is that simple. Your job is not, as a lawyer, just to answer legal questions. It is to help clients achieve goals. It is to help clients. And they are going to come to you, and if you allow them to talk, they are going to tell you everything you need to be able to help them. And some of the time, that help is going to be, outside of the law. It could be any number of things, because people who are outside of the law. You can very easily say to them, do you know what? I think I know someone who can help, or I've got a network on social media. Let me do a shout out. Let me do a shout out, see if somebody can help you that I know and trust. And That's really, really important, that network that we have, using it to help clients. And the last one, which is really important, I mentioned before, embrace technology. Embrace it because it's here and it is designed to help us. It is not designed to replace us. The truth is, if we carry on down the road that we are on at the moment, technology will one day replace us, because people will get used to this idea that technology can do these things that lawyers keep claiming only they can do. If we use technology to improve the client experience, to improve our relationships with clients, and to become trusted advisors that can come to us for help and to sound out ideas and to be those strategic partners with us and them, then technology is going to be the most incredible thing that happens in the legal profession.
Awesome. Just to reiterate, business development cannot wait. Network is important, and embrace your technology. Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your point of view. I know by fact that our audience is going to love it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Priggya, for having me. I've had the most brilliant time.
Thank you. Hey there, thank you for attending today's session. If you enjoyed today's session, do follow our channel and consider sharing it with a friend. My name is Priggya Arora, daughter of inspiring parents, alumna of IIT Kharagpur, engineer turned lawyer and entrepreneur, and now founder of PL Legal, where we help creators and innovators protect their intellectual property. Thank you.